Are any of you fine ladies planning on voting in our upcoming election? I most certainly hope you do. And when you exercise that most sought-after right, I hope you think of me, Jessie Butler. I worked my whole life for women's rights. I was born here in Pueblo in 1886. My father was a dairy farmer, and I went to Carlisle Elementary School. I was always a bit more progressive than the other little girls. When I was in the 4th grade, I invited all the little girls to my house for a picnic. And then afterward, we went wading in the river. Well, first one little skirt got wet, and then the next was getting wet. And so I said, let's just take it all off, girls. That's what the boys do. Why shouldn't we? Well, those little girls were in great doubt as to whether that was a nice thing to do. Very great doubt. But I led the way. And soon we were all swimming and having a gorgeous time. Well, needless to say, when they went home and told their mothers what they'd done, they were never allowed to play at Jessie's house again. Well, I make it sound idyllic, but it was a hard life growing up in Pueblo at that time. There were no modern conveniences, and it was especially hard for women. My mother died when I was 10 years old, and it was a tragic loss because my youngest sibling had drowned in an irrigation ditch 4 days before my mother passed on. And before my mother died, she leaned over to me and she said, Jessie, you are a bright girl. You have got to get an education. Well, this was news to me. I had never heard that I was a bright girl, but it made a big impression, as you can imagine. And I was lucky because I had fabulous teachers here in Pueblo, both at Carlisle Elementary and then at Central High School. One day, I went into the principal of Central High School and I said, what is the best women's college in America? And he said, well, Vassar is a great college, but it's for rich girls. And I said, well, that's not for me because I'm not rich. And then he said, Smith College is a very modern and alert college and one of the best. And I said, thank you very much, I'll go there. But he looked a little surprised. I guess I didn't look like Smith College material to him. But I went home and I wheedled $10 out of my father and I enrolled at Smith College at the age of 14. I was one of only, I think, 2 girls who went to college from Pueblo that year. College absolutely changed my life. I mean, I had always been searching for women who could show me a plan for the span of my life. I wanted to know how to carry on an intellectual life and have a home and family. But, you didn't do that back then. It was one or the other. My professors, they'd chosen an intellectual life, so they didn't have families. But I wanted both. Well, not the housework part. I disdain housework, but I did want children. After I graduated, I joined the workforce, and I could immediately see that women were being exploited for their labor. I mean, most of the women that I knew, they were working for starvation wages. I didn't know that I was a feminist back then. I just knew what was unendurable, and that was unendurable. So I went about changing it. I became the first female lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and I lobbied for women to get a minimum wage so that they couldn't be taken advantage of. And I was successful on a federal level. Next, I joined the suffrage movement. I was passionate that women should have a right to vote, just the same as men. Well, I went on a Western States speaking tour with Carrie Chapman Catt. She was one of the great suffragettes of America at the time. And, well, some of those women, when they would speak out, would be thrown in jail. And, then while they were in jail, some of my friends would go on a hunger strike. They just would not eat. They refused to eat. And then the authorities would get so afraid that they were going to die in this jail and become a martyr to their cause, that then they would force feed them. And they would shove tubes down their throats and put food in so that they wouldn't die. I mean, it was horrific. But, as you know, we were successful, and in 1919, I was on the stand in Washington, D.C. when we disbanded the Women's Suffrage Association because we could happily form the League of Women Voters. Yeah. Yes. About the same time, I was married, and I did go on to have 2 children. I got my children, but I never enjoyed housework at all. We lived in London for a few years, and then we moved back to Washington, D.C. And this is when I found my true love and vocation in life. I studied public speaking at George Washington University, and I became really good at it. And then I started giving lessons to all the women and even some men in Washington, D.C. I gave public speaking lessons to our president's wife, Eleanor Roosevelt. And she was one of my biggest supporters and would send all her friends my way. I went on to write 3 books, one of which is called Time to Speak Up, and it is a book all about public speaking just for women. As you can see from my beginnings here in Pueblo, I went on to change the world for women in our country. I hope next time you exercise these simple rights, ladies, you'll remember these rights had to be fought for. And I, Jessie Butler, did it happily for myself and for each of you.